Good afternoon to Cortland Crush fans. This is Bill McConnell, the GM and head coach of Cortland Crush in the New York Collegiate Baseball League, with two very special guests today on our CrushCast. We're going to go fishing today with Coach David Valesente of Ithaca College. And good afternoon, Coach. How are you?
Hey, Bill. How are you? Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. And we have Coach Dave Meluni, a former alum of IC, current professor at Syracuse Sports Management, and also the senior director of sports for the New York Collegiate Baseball League. Dave, how are you doing?
Good. Good to see you again, Bill.
Well, it's good seeing you guys and talking baseball coming up here, July 24th, MLB. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. But more importantly, let's focus on you. You know, for Coach Valesente, essentially, you know, if you look at your resume and dossier, you have been in baseball since you were born. You know, your father's involvement in baseball, both collegiately, coaching, professionally, and now here you are in your own career. So what do you think about that looking back as a young child and growing into your position where you are today?
Bill, I really am very grateful for my childhood and upbringing and the opportunities that I had. I consider myself very lucky to have the opportunity to grow up on a baseball field and in the locker room and on Ithaca College's campus. For a large part of my childhood, Ithaca College served as essentially a babysitter for me, bouncing around to different athletic buildings, baseball, the basketball, the swimming, to gymnastics, rollerblading around campus, and eventually working into practices and being involved with the players in good and bad ways, which I'm sure Coach Meluni can attest to. But, really a childhood that I highly cherish, and I am very confident in saying it has helped mold me into the man that I am today.
Well, good. That's an awesome view of it. And of course, with Dave Meluni, currently a youth coach, along with participation in NYCBL, you were an accomplished athlete in your own day at IC. You attended IC at 1996 to 2000, a career 353 hitter in 4 years of RC baseball, recognized by Rawlings ABCA as all-region third base and Empire 8 first base, first team first baseman and team captain in 2000. That says a lot, Dave. So congratulations in looking back in the day. So now you have a young man who was a younger man at that time. How do you look back at your time and now see Coach Valesente at the helm?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, when I look through and look back, I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I'm very involved with them. Actually, we had practice this morning, and back to David's dad, Coach Val, that I call him. I always call him Coach Val. He taught us the game of life. He taught us life through the game of baseball. And it's the same sort of message that I'm sort of trying to teach, our younger players, including my son. And we just got back from Maryland playing in a tournament, but it's, picking up the dugout and making sure your shoes are cleaned, right? And being respectful to your parents. And, I remember David, and he had mentioned it, is that IC was kind of like a babysitter for him. So he was Nicholas's age, running around. And his dad let him, and he was very respectful, but he was running around all over the place. And one story in particular, I don't remember if it had to be towards the middle of the season because the weather was a little bit nicer, and it was probably April, and we were probably getting ready for regionals, and David's running around, and Coach Val's really not paying much attention to him. But as we all know, pitchers are a little bit of a different breed, and we're coming out of BP or something, and I look, and Coach Val's yelling, David, David, David. And David's like not saying anything. And I look, and David's literally taped to the pole in the dugout. And he's not moving. And he looks down, he's like, Dad. And all of a sudden, Coach Val just yells to the pitchers. He knew exactly what pitchers, who it was. And he tells them to like untape David and let him go. But I'll never forget that. But I knew when, David was younger, that he was going to be a pretty good ball player. And then the irony to it is Fritz Hamburg, who was an assistant when I played, ended up being David's college coach at St. Joe. So that was pretty neat. And then when David, talk a little bit about when he was with the Pirates in the minor leagues, my boys were real little and we got to go see him. So it was pretty cool. And it really is the Ithaca baseball family.
Well, that's a great story. And I'm sure Coach Valesente, with your grin there, you probably remember that day quite well at some point there. You know, Coach, you look back on your time at St. Joseph's and University in Philadelphia. What a distinguished career you had there as a four-year member of the baseball team, selected as the senior male athlete of the year at the university, three-time most outstanding player of the team, also Atlantic 10 Rookie of the Year in 07, and 323 batting average and ranked fifth with 216 hits for the Hawks for all time. When you look back at those times there, what did you learn that molded you to who you are today?
You know, I came from such a small school and background in Lansing. It is so different now than what it was when I was playing in terms of travel ball and the showcase circuit. There wasn't a ton of exposure for us, you know, in this area. And my dad, you know, sacrificed a ton, and we commuted to Syracuse to play a little bit, and eventually got some exposure down at Villanova and was recruited by Sean Pender, who is now fairly high up with the Reds right now. But I went to play at St. Joe's, and you know, it was a dream come true for me to have an opportunity to play Division I and you know, be able to compete in a successful conference, the Atlantic 10 conference. And you know, to be honest with you, we faced a good amount of adversity. You know, the facilities were off campus. You know, we had a decent drive. We played on a few different fields in my four-year career. I played for three different head coaches. You know, so I played for Sean Pender. He ended up going to the Reds, and then Lee Severio, who was formerly at LaSalle, coached me my sophomore year. And then Fritz Hamburg came in and coached my last 2 years. So kind of having to prove yourself each time to three different coaches was challenging. And, you know, playing on a few different fields, which now they have a beautiful turf facility right on campus, you know, which I'm glad to see. But learned so many things from not only the coaches, but the players, and my experiences through summer baseball and just being around the game. And obviously countless hours and nights of talking to my dad, you know, about the game. And like Dave said earlier, just life lessons that it teaches you every day.
Well, good. You know, and Dave Meluni, you had a chance to play for Coach Hamburg as an assistant coach at Ithaca, correct?
Yeah, he was an assistant coach. Yeah, I always forget that David he had three coaches, and Coach Fritz came towards the end of his career. But yeah, I played for Coach Hamburg. He was an assistant coach, right? But the interesting part with the NYCBL is I played for Coach Joe Brown, and Coach Hamburg was the head coach at Newark. So he could not coach me in the summer. So I was playing for a Cortland guy, which was an Ithaca alum, and then playing against Coach Hamburg. So it was fun that summer. We actually lost to them in the NYCBL championship when Fritz was a head coach. And I actually think then the following year is when one of those other years he ended up moving on and then ended up at St. Joe's down the road. So
good. Coach Valesente, you know, you graduated and you ended up going to the Pecos League in independent baseball, and then finally into affiliated baseball. That year in the Pecos with the Alpine Cowboys, what were your impressions and what did you draw from that you try to relate to possibly to your players today?
You know, there was a little bit of disappointment after finishing college, and, you know, I was hoping to sign a free agent contract and potentially go in the draft. Had some interest from the Pirates, but it didn't work out. I went and played up in Canada, actually, on the weekends in the inter-county league with the Ottawa Fat Cats to try and, you know, potentially hook on there. Awesome experience up there as well. And then the following season, I ended up signing with the Pecos League Alpine Cowboys down in Alpine, Texas, which for those of you who are not aware where that is, it's like 2 hours west of Midland, Odessa. So, I mean, it's pretty out there in Texas. 06 Ranch is one of the biggest ranches in Texas. I went down, I was hesitant at first, you know, but it was an opportunity to play professional baseball, in my opinion. I was getting paid, you know, enough to live and to eat and to have an occasional beer. But, you know, we played good competitive baseball at the time. We had players that were, you know, better than what we faced in college. And, you know, the opportunity to go down there was one of the best experiences I've had in baseball. You know, just the host family I lived with and the experiences that we had down there in Texas. You know, I'm very grateful for that, and I'm really encouraging of other players to experience that. And I know there's been, you know, a pipeline of players in this area to go down there, both from Ithaca and with Coach Stevens, who I played for, who is a good friend of mine. It's a great opportunity for players to get their foot in the door.
Well, and that's I love the name Ottawa Fat Cats.
Yeah.
That's a cool and interesting name there. So,
Well, the Canadian ball players are, you know, as you would think, they're very mature. A lot of them played hockey growing up. They are hard-nosed athletes, and I really enjoyed playing with them. And you know, we're trying to get into Canada a little bit more from a recruiting side of things. I actually have a couple guys coming this year from Canada who we're excited about.
I love the Canadian ball players. With CNY Thunder in Syracuse a few years ago, I used to get up there often, and you can see them, how hard they have to work with the weather, even compared to our weather, just to even be seen for a varsity season. So yeah. From there, you got into the Pirate organization, and Dave Meluni, you actually got to see Coach Valesente play. Tell us a little bit about the impressions that left with your children or yourself being an alum, and obviously with great respect for him and his dad.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to, I don't remember what year it was, but, you know, David was playing in Auburn and had an opportunity to take the boys there, and just for the boys to see, you know, they don't really understand at that age, but they understood at the age, like, hey, this guy's in the Pirates organization. You know, David comes over, and I would explain to the boys, like, hey, you guys may have a dream. He had a dream one day, and now he's in this system. And, you know, the other part to that now is, like, my 11-year-old thinks that, you know, he's best friends with Tim LaCastro, right? So, you know, it's funny. We went to Tim's MLB game in New York City last year, and after the game, Tim had hit the home run, and my 10-year-old at the time sending Tim a message on Instagram, and Tim responds. And when I see Tim the next time, I'm like, you can't do that. Like, my 11-year-old shouldn't think he has, he's friends with a major leaguer. But the impressions there, you know, the number of pro players that came through Ithaca, and I had played with a few of them that ended up pitching in the Padres organization, and just the family atmosphere, and David's continuing that. I'm very proud of David and excited that, you know, the legacy is going to be continued from the Valesente family. So.
Oh, those are great words. David, you know, a few years ago, I happened to look at a Pirates minor league. I think it's a player assessment, a tool every player had every day. And in that was feedback, self-assessment. I think self-assessment is important in more than baseball. And in your experience with the Pirates, how'd you like your experience in the NY Penn League? And did you see that self-assessment tool used a lot in your playing days?
Yeah, you know, to have the opportunity to sign was a dream come true for me. You know, I was very emotional about it. It's something that I wanted to do my whole life. And I literally signed for a bag of peanuts and a trip down to spring training with no guarantees. You know, they asked if I'd be interested in, you know, trying out catching and getting behind the plate. And I said, absolutely, you know, so I actually did some work with Fritz before going down. It's kind of a funny story how it worked out. I got minimal work behind the plate, trained with Fritz for a little while before going down. And I get down there, and of course it's pitcher catchers with the big leagues. And one of the first guys that I catch is Garrett Cole, throwing like 92-mile-an-hour sliders. And I'm a new catcher here, and they don't know much about me. It's pretty much, you know, adapt or go home, you know, so it was a quick learning experience. And just being there, like having the opportunity to throw the jersey on every day and be in that culture and around big leaguers and around, you know, big money players was eye-opening. And you know, one thing that I was always taught by Dad and from other coaches is just to keep my mouth shut and work hard, you know, do what I'm supposed to do and let the chips fall in place. And that's what I did. You know, I showed up early for everything. I was last to leave. I worked hard. I had nothing behind me, you know, financially, but, you know, ended up getting a decent amount of opportunity my first year, and didn't play a ton, which was one of the first times in my career that happened. That I was a bench player playing behind some higher end draft picks, and that was really hard for me. And I actually worked my butt off in the off season with a high motivation, and came back and impressed the catching coordinator. He actually asked, what the heck happened. And I told him I didn't like sitting, and I wasn't used to sitting and not playing. And, I was highly motivated. So I felt that with hard work and motivation and doing the right thing, it kept me there longer, even though they had nothing to owe me. And I still stay in touch with a lot of those guys actually that I played with are now in the big leagues, and I still am closely connected with. So it's pretty neat.
That's a good point. You made two great points there, Coach. One, my dad did the same, and I imagine Dave is keep your mouth quiet, be all eyes and ears, and learn from there and leave your impressions, from that. Going into, Dave Meluni, you spent 2 summers playing for Coach Brown for the Ithaca Lakers, and you played with some pretty high draft picks in there. So using that same analogy that Coach Valesente used, what did you feel like when you were playing those days, being from Ithaca College, now the other guys that you played with those 2 summers?
Yeah, Bill, I wasn't, I sat down with David's dad and Coach Val, and I really didn't know. Same thing when you're in high school in upstate New York, and I'm in a town here that's really driven by lacrosse, and you just don't know. But it's the one thing that David's dad would always harp upon is go out and compete, right? So you have to go out and compete. And I tell kids that are 10 years old, 12 years old, 14, can you compete, right? We go down to Maryland for a tournament, you got to compete. So when I got to the NYCBL, here's a guy from Ole Miss. Here's a guy from Notre Dame. Here's a guy from Indiana. Here's a guy from Pittsburgh, right? Here's a guy from Bowling Green. Here's a guy from George Washington, Citadel. All I did was I remembered, we're going to compete. Everybody's using a wood bat. It's a little bit different. And I played, right? I mean, I hit fine. I fit in. I wasn't sitting on the bench. We had 13 guys the first year that I played. The next year got drafted. So out of those 13 guys, 1 made it to the major leagues from Indiana University. Doug DeVore, he played with the Diamondbacks a couple years. But, the whole Division III piece, we competed. Right. I mean, Coach Val ran it like a pro. Everything was structured, and I'm sure David is similar in the way he practiced based off of what his dad and Fritz and pro ball. Everything was run like a pro organization. So for me, there was no adjustment. You might see consistently 90, 92 as opposed to 85 to 88. But sometimes the 90, 92 straight was a little bit funner to hit than the 85, 88 that was slurving all over the place. So, but there wasn't a huge adjustment because we were prepared from Coach Val, and then the motto of just go out there and compete.
Oh, good. Coach Valesente, I would think one of the greatest honors in your professional career was being the inaugural coach of a new college program at Wells College. Why don't you take us through your thoughts on that process? And you spent 3 years there, each year improving, and actually we placed 3 of your players with us over the last couple of years in the with the Cortland Crush. But truly an honor to be picked as a brand new baseball college coach.
Yeah, I was actually coaching down in Philadelphia at the time. I was at St. Joe's, was there for 2 years, and was approached by Mike Lindbergh, who is still the athletic director at Wells. And he, we've known Mike for a while. He actually was the AD at Ithaca College, or associate AD for many years there. And he mentioned that Wells was thinking about starting a baseball program and putting in a big turf facility. And he caught my attention, pretty closely when he started mentioning that. And, one thing led to the next, and he made a lot of things happen at Wells. And, they ended up posting the position for, with a plan to have the first year as a growth and, building phase for the program. I went in and interviewed. I loved the small town of Aurora, which I drove through a bunch, but never had been up in Wells College much. But it was a great opportunity for me to come back home, to be close to family. and the region that I love so much here. And, 4 years went by in a flash. We ended up building a program from scratch, everything that you can think of, in terms of developing the brand, to recruiting a whole team, ordering equipment. It was truly a really valuable experience for me just to have to go through all of that. And, we had a few assistant coaches that helped along the way, but we acquired a really good group of guys, that stayed with us. We lost a ton, that it didn't work out, but our nucleus of players stuck with us, and, it got progressively better each year. We fell just short of winning the conference championship in my last year. One of my best players actually transferred to play for my dad and ended up leading the league in team and hitting. So he would have helped us on the mound and at the left-hand side of the stick here at Wells. But it all worked out well. And, now Ryan Stevens is over there, who, again, I'm really close with, and he's going to do a great job with the program and keep that going in the right direction.
Well, and speaking of Ryan, he's a great addition to the Crush. He came on as an associate head coach last year and a pitching coach, and certainly well versed, as you mentioned, in the Pecos League. We love having him there. And a player that you mentioned certainly did a great job for us last year, and we'll go from there. So before we go into a little bit about Ithaca here, for Dave Meluni, what do you see transitioning? We have these changes, COVID-19 right now, the draft has changed, and from you as an outsider looking in the college scene, what changes do you see? And then I'll go back to Coach Valesente, who's living that right now, those changes for you. How do they trickle down? So Dave Meluni, what do you see from your vantage point in sports management in the NYCBL?
You're talking baseball in general, Bill?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I'm going to put my professor hat on now, and talking to our students, minor league baseball is going to lose probably 40 teams, which we already know that, right? So from the industry standpoint, for opportunities for sport management students, there is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But at the same time, people are creative, right? So the Lansing Lugnuts, they just created the Lemonade League. I don't even know if you've heard about this, but this year they're creating the Lemonade League, which is going to be a collegiate wooden bat league, because their minor league stadium is now, closed, or it's open, but the team is not playing. But there's quite a few in New York. I think there's a huge impact in New York State where, if the Auburn Doubledays or the Batavia Muck Dogs, how does that impact summer baseball and opportunities in collegiate or independent leagues? And these are jobs for students. And I'll let David talk about the collegiate side, from the Division III, the Division I. You have the extra year. David's probably, he's definitely got players at Ithaca, some that have graduated and moved on, and some that are going to come back. But I think sports in general, I told my students when we left in March, you better be prepared for 18 months of a little bit of a shakeup, and I truly kind of believe that. But I think we'll be back and strong, and I think baseball is going to look a little bit different from the affiliations and not as many teams as we move forward. But opportunities for jobs, and I think analytics are going to play a huge part in baseball moving forward.
I would agree with that. For Coach Valesente, you got to Ithaca last fall, a year ago right now, and now you built a program and your first season cut short. What are those effects on your program right now and all the things everybody, looks at and plans for, recruiting, attrition, and now getting Jen back up again?
It's been a crazy year, Bill. It's been absolutely insane, as you guys know, and we've all been affected by it. And I remember sitting in my office and calling my administrator asking, if this virus was going to have an impact on us traveling. And, they didn't have any knowledge about it or NCAA publication on it. And a couple days went by and progressively got worse and continued to snowball. And we ended up, not going on our spring trip. And then eventually the season gets canceled. So it was absolutely devastating for everybody. Not only our program, but several of the programs at Ithaca that were competing for national championships and just programs across the country. There's so many people affected by this, which is, pretty unbelievable and heartbreaking. But, it's good to see that the NCAA is granting a blanket waiver of eligibility. It's a lot more challenging than people may think. They just think, oh, they get an extra year, it's going to be easy. But, there's a lot of factors that come in, and, there's going to be high competition between programs from every level. Every level of college baseball is going to be affected, from junior college to high-end Division I's. With this blanket waiver, cheaper schools for fifth-year options, master's programs that certain guys are looking for, more scholarship opportunities, big rosters, so the blanket waiver is going to be nice for certain people. Others, it won't be a good option. So there's going to be a lot of strategic choices to be made here moving forward. And it's so early, and it's changing weekly. It's been just a whirlwind.
Well, you're exactly right. Everything is changing so much so, but well, listen, let me do this. Let me wrap up here in a moment with the same question for both of you. Okay. So for Dave Meluni, you are a Bomber alumni. How do you feel, as you look back at your time there, the pride that you have, how did you feel about your program? And then looking forward today, what are your outside looking in impressions of IC baseball?
Well, I bleed Bomber blue, and
I knew that.
I literally can't stand the color red. And I tell Joe Brown, who I have to work with the NYCBL, that I can't. All our uniforms, Camillus, thank God, we're blue and gold and the white and the blue. But I'm joking, but half joking. But I have a lot of respect for that, for Cortland. But very proud to have been able to have played for Ithaca College, right? And Coach Val would always talk about Carp Wood and Bucky Freeman and the Steve DeMattis and all those guys before us. And like I told you, I was very proud to, that David was named the head coach, and because I knew that it would continue the way that it came from, the Carp Woods and the Bucky Freeman and Coach Val, and David's going to have the same philosophy. And we have a strong alumni base, and the field is unbelievable, just sitting up on top of the hill. And my dad and I talk, and my grandfather had passed a couple years ago, and they're just those stories so you remember coming up, and all these little stories you remember. And I still talk to a bunch of the guys that I played with, and the John McNallys and the Ron Amatos, and all those guys that had come through, and the Brian Galls of the world who had played up to AAA. Brian's here in Syracuse, and consider all those guys friends. But very proud of David from being that 12-year-old taped to the pole. I never maybe would have envisioned that he would have been the next head coach after his dad, but it's pretty cool.
Those are great words, Dave, and a lot of great names in there. So for you, Coach Valesente, to make it a wrap today, you've kind of come full circle as that 12-year-old that Dave Meluni talks about, to leading the helm there. A lot of alumni, a lot of legacy. How does it feel to be in Bomber Blue right now?
It's a dream come true for me. I'm not an alum of Ithaca baseball, but I feel like one. I feel like I'm a part of the family. I always have felt that way, and these guys like Dave have made me and helped me feel that way. The alumni back to the 1980 team, and from all the way up to this previous group of guys, they are all so passionate about what Ithaca College baseball stands for, and they're confident in the direction it's going to go. I told my dad that this isn't something that I wanted just handed to me. I wanted to earn it, and I hope that he wouldn't have thought of me for this position if he didn't think that it would be a right fit. And he's been fully supportive in this whole process, and I can't tell you the reaction that he had when I told him, that I got offered the job. The excitement that he had was unbelievable. And, I'm very excited about the opportunity and, what Ithaca College means and what it stands for. We share the same values, Dad and I, but we're different people. We're different coaches, and it's really unique to have, some newer coaches, younger coaches mixed with some of Dad's former coaches, and he's helping out as well. So a little bit of new school and old school. We have a really good dynamic, a ton of teaching and knowledge that's going to be brought to the table that is really invaluable.
And Bill, can I jump in for 1 second? So be remiss if, and David just mentioned it, like the Frank Fazios of the world, right? The Hawks of the world, the Coach Hamburgs, and Brian Angelico, who's a coach in the NFL, right? So that's the other part to this, was the synergy between all of the athletic programs. David probably doesn't remember, but there was a JV baseball program, and we had football offensive and defensive coordinators who were the head coaches, and Brian Angelico was one of them. And Coach Fazio, like Coach Val and Coach Fazio are like my second dads, right? So, I mean, anytime David got in trouble, he probably doesn't remember this, but Coach Fazio had your back. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Angelico used to throw me BP. I mean, I remember all those guys, the dynamic there. I can promise you, Bill, a coaching staff like that is very rare. For those guys, Dad, Hawk, Faz, coaching together for 30 years. They're all best friends. They grew up together. That does not happen, and the amount of knowledge that they have and the amount of, excuse my French, ball busting that goes on is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, listen, for both you, Dave Meluni and Coach David Valesente, thanks for your time today with the Cortland CrushCast here, and we'll see you soon, and we'll talk again, okay?
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Had fun.